Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, stories, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out the articles, videos, and more at passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, join the community forum, and of course, attend the weekly online Global Passive House Happy Hour. Now, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand. How are you doing, Zach?
I'm well. I'm in Seattle, and it's a nice fall day, and something of a return to normalcy in most respects, I suppose. It's good. It's good.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you?
somewhat.
Yeah.
We're definitely getting there. Now, this interview today, I had this conversation with Peter Bielski, who is a passive house builder in Christchurch here in New Zealand. It was actually recorded back in April, so there's a few mentions during this episode about things shutting down and things slowing down. So it's just an interesting bit of context there. Things have gone quite well over the last 5 months for the building industry. There's still quite a lot of activity going on. So he's actually come out the other side of that fairly well. So yeah, we may as well jump straight into it. By way of introduction, Peter basically started out as an apprentice more than 20 years ago now, and learnt to build the way things are typically done in New Zealand, which isn't that great. And he got the opportunity in 2012 to go on a trip to Germany, where he got some first-hand experience working with Passive House, erecting houses for Viva House, which is a prefabrication company, where, as Peter describes it, they have about 900 employees and they build about 900 houses every year. So when he returned to New Zealand after a year away, Peter could not go back to the way he was taught as an apprentice. And today he runs Ethos Homes, which prides itself in being builders of passive house and high-performance homes. And he's got a growing number of very impressive builds in his portfolio. So here's my conversation with Peter Bielski, and I started out by asking him how he got into building in the first place. Thanks for your time, Peter. Really appreciate it, especially given it's a weekend. Usually start out by just going through a bit of background and by way of introduction, how did you get into building in the first place?
I started back in 1999 my building apprenticeship after being a fencing contractor on farms, and we built a couple of deer sheds, which I really enjoyed. And I thought, I could see a much better future being a builder than being a fencer for the rest of my life. So I went and did trade course and thoroughly enjoyed building. Got a building apprenticeship and have never really looked back since. And it's been 21 years ago now.
And I imagine at the time you were building stock standard New Zealand houses, code compliant type stuff?
Yes, all our houses were minimum code. They were beautiful homes, the homes that we built, but it's a bit like a facade, really. The bones are pretty crap, and but people were prepared to pay for that, so that's what they got.
Yeah. And 99 to 2000, the code was even less than what it is now back then, wasn't it? Even slightly less with insulation requirements.
Yeah, definitely. They've made inroads like double glazing and the amount of insulation that's got to be put around the windows and doors, and the insulation in the ceilings and walls. Yeah, there has been positives, Matthew.
Yeah. So how did you go from doing that sort of stock standard code, but nice in terms of high end quality to what now you've done Green Building Council Homestar. You're a Passive House certified tradesperson, and you've built some of the literally the cover story passive houses in Christchurch. Some of the images pop up around the place. How did that happen?
Well, I can tell you one thing, Matthew. I was never comfortable building the way we were building, and I saw even some of the quality of the insulation installs and the missing bits where internal walls meet external wall junctions, external corners, lots of insulation missing, and it used to really upset me that everyone turned a blind eye to it, because I thought, well, it must have an impact on the building performance. But it wasn't until I ended up in Germany, went over there sharing, and I ended up getting a job building for a big company called Viva House, who specialise in prefabrication. They have like 900 employees and build 900 homes a year. Yeah. And I travelled around France, Germany, and Switzerland building these beautiful homes. And I learned a lot, not only about prefabrication, but about high performance builds. They weren't built to passive standard. I do remember asking a guy that could speak English, why aren't these certified passive houses? He said, we don't even go there. There's way too much paperwork and effort to attain a passive house, so they had their own standard.
Yeah.
And so that was a real eye opener for me, and so since I came back to New Zealand in 2013 and established myself in Christchurch, I wanted to start building passive houses. I wanted to build houses that were measurable.
Yep.
And when I saw every house that we built there being blower door tested, this was like, wow, what is this? You're able to measure the performance of the house. And that's what I wanted to do here. I wanted to be able to build houses that you could put them, that would come out with an outcome. And I would be able to guarantee the homeowner that the job that we had done was backed up by measuring device.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty much standard practice for Viva House, but also just construction in general around Germany, I would imagine.
Yeah, I imagine so. I did build on a couple of other owner builds where they the homeowners were building their own home, and I helped them in the weekends.
Right.
And they were doing all the taping. It's just common practice.
Yeah.
To build like that, and it's so far ahead of what we do, and it's the mindset that needs to be changed.
Yeah. So you have that experience. You were there for, it was only 6 months or so, was it?
I was there for a year in total, because I had to learn. I started off sharing, and then I went and had an interview with Viva House. Right. They said that I had a translator, and they said that I had to learn German. So I went to a German course in Baden-Baden for 3 months, learned German, and then I came back and had the interview in German.
Awesome.
And I had to answer 4 questions and understand and answer them properly, and I managed to do it. And then I was actually working for the company for only about 4 or 5 months.
Right.
But we built a lot of homes in that time, maybe 15, 20 homes.
And were you inside a factory, or were you out on site doing the erecting of the prefabricated houses?
Oh, I was on site in the on-site install team.
Right.
So
so components would arrive on a truck, and you'd put them all together. How long would it take to build a house?
A day.
Right.
So we had the roof on, locked up, and by the end of the day.
Wow.
And then it took another 4 to 5 days on site to clean everything else up, and then the sub trades would come in, chip stoppers and tilers and kitchen installers.
Yeah. And were these on concrete foundations, or this is
all of them had a basement,
right?
And they were on a concrete slab, and then they ran services over top of the concrete slab, then put insulation over top of that, then poured another screed over top of that.
Right. Yeah. So some of that groundwork had been done prior.
Yes.
And then you just turn up with the panels.
Yeah. See, there's it doesn't actually take. There's a lot of work off site that's been done, and a lot of work that's still has to get done in a house. That I think there's a lot of misconceptions about prefabrication.
Yeah.
It just takes away the big heavy lifting, because you have a crane on site, so you can lift in the panels really quickly and get it watertight really fast.
Yeah.
That's the big advantage.
Yeah. So having seen the light and experienced that process, you land back in Christchurch, and how do you the industry sort of hasn't moved on. They don't have the experience that you've just had. What do you do then? How do you've got this vision of what you want to do and how you want to build. How do you go about selling that idea and getting some clients who want to go on that journey?
This is a difficult thing, Matthew. It's a good question. The first thing is you got to earn money. Yeah. And there's no good talking about these things, because most people don't even want to hear what you're talking about, because that is so foreign to a lot of people.
Literally,
so
yeah.
I just got a job. Sorry?
Literally foreign, yeah.
Yeah. And I got a job working for a building company and in the rebuild, and basically after a few months it went to the back of my mind a little bit and just got stuck on and did the job. It wasn't until the opportunity came up where I was going to build a house for a company in 2015, and a company I was working for, and then they suddenly changed their mind and they wanted to build a certified passive house, and went to eHouse.
Yep.
And my boss at the time was like, "There's no way that's happening. This could be the start of what you want to do."
Uh-huh.
So I went and did passive house tradesperson's course, and then learn more about passive.
Yep.
And we got the job, and we started Ethos Homes.
Yeah. And tell us about Ethos now. Where are you at in terms of number of houses that you've done, and what you're obviously not right now, because everyone's kind of stopped work for this little period of lockdown. But how are things looking?
They're looking really positive. We've built 2 certified passive houses in Christchurch.
Yep.
And another 10 homes we've built to really high standard. Most of them have been put through the passive house planning package.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them have met or exceeded the passive house standard for blower door testing. So they've all been blower door tested.
Yep.
And so
you're consistently getting below 0.6 air changes?
Yes.
Whether they're demanding a certified passive house or not, you're aiming for that? Yeah. And so you're obviously putting some pretty good ventilation systems in there as standard practice as well?
Yes, we are. Every house has a certified passive house ventilation system installed.
Yeah. And so how big's your team now? How many people you got at Ethos?
I have 2 employees and 2 or 3 contractors, depending on how much work's on.
Yeah. So it's people would say it's relatively small in the scheme of things at the moment. How do you see the industry growing, or the demand for that level of performance of house? Is that something that you think is growing?
Yes, I definitely think it is growing. However, I'll mention that we did get quite big about a year ago. We had a lot of demand, and I had about 9 employees.
Yeah.
And it got a little bit out of hand. And
yeah.
I realised very soon that these houses can't be built on a mass scale at all. With where we're at the moment.
Right.
So I had cut right back. It was really stressful, doing a lot of work that I wasn't getting paid for. It's so important that I'm there from the concept of the house with the designer and the engineer team. The design team and build team is so important to the successful outcome of these homes.
So at this stage, it sounds like the quality is more important than quantity, and maintaining that level of quality requires constant vigilance from yourself.
Yes, it's critical. And, we've just built a house that we'll just get straight back into when this lockdown lifts.
Yeah.
And pre-jib fixing or pre-line blower door test, we got 0.19 air changes per hour, which we're all really proud of.
0.19, that's very good.
And that's a record for us. And it's not about setting records, it's about doing the best job possible we can for each individual client and making that house perform to the highest standard. So I changed my business plan about a year ago when I saw that I didn't think we were going in the right direction. It was too much stress, where we basically did charge up work, or the house was properly like a comprehensive price. There's a lot of unknowns in building passive houses. It's almost like quite often during the build, the goalposts keep getting shifted because it hadn't been foreseen that there needed to be more insulation or more framing had to be built to meet that standard.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit I was gun shy.
Right. Yeah. Where do you stand at the moment regarding prefabrication?
It's a good question. That prefabrication has its place. I don't believe prefabrication gives you any advantage in our building environment today.
Because you've had a go at a bit of both, right? You've had panels construction delivered to site, and you've done sort of stick framing, but to a higher standard. So, and you've also, of course, had that the experience in Germany of building a house in a day. What is it that prevents that type of construction process from happening here in New Zealand or even Australia at the moment?
It's a collaboration, Matthew. It's demand and supply. It's the people on the ground are as important, if not more important, than the millions of dollars worth of Weinmann gear that you need, like the CNC cutters. The company I worked for in Germany, the director started in 1950, and with another person, and they built sheds, and they slowly built a team of guys around the gear that they were using, so they would make a profit, buy a bit more gear. They built from that small little team into something that is a powerful machine today. Whereas humans are funny creatures. Like you can explain to them that this actually can't be done unless you do it this way. So companies will go out and spend millions of dollars and buy a big shed and all the gear and expect them just to start spitting out frames and it all to work as a collaboration with the builder and all that. It just doesn't work, Matthew.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, Viva House employ everybody, the builders, the plumbers, the electricians, the ventilation installers. They employ the whole thing, the engineers, the architects. They're a whole team. And so I learned from that. I saw what they did. Here, Viva, their director, still turns up to work. Was still turning up to work and working a full day in the office when I was there at 70 years old.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, the prefabrication side of things, you've seen a few companies come and go. Everybody wants to try it and think it sounds all amazing, and we're going to do this. But we actually have resorted back to stick framing. A detailer that we use, I've educated him in a wall system that meets a certain the standard that we're trying to achieve.
Yep.
And they put ply or a rigid barrier on that, and we basically have a panel, but it's got nothing in it.
Yeah.
And we control it.
So by detailer, do you mean the designer, the specifier?
No, a detailer. He's almost a freelance detailer that I've come across, and he details the frames, and then flips them through the factory, and they get made.
Right. Okay. So there's a person there in between the frame and truss production, and he's tweaking those designs. A key point there is you mentioned that you educated that detailer, and that's something that I've thought a lot about, the fact that builders such as yourself who have had that experience and have this vision of what you want, almost have to educate the designers and the architects or the draftspeople, and to say, look, this is what we're aiming for. Can you please draw it this way? Because if you draw it to standard 3604 or just the building code, it's just not going to work to the level that you require. So has that been a bit of a process to educate those people around you?
Yes, it has. And the designers that I find best to work with are the designers that want to learn. They want to learn about passive and actually understand that they don't know anything about passive, so they're doing their best to school up and learn. And
which I imagine is an ego challenge for some designers.
Yeah, and I'm not a designer. I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination, but I know what it takes to build a certified passive house. And you've got to throw away a lot of those. Well, aesthetically, a lot of architects have their own signature, I suppose, and some of those signatures don't work with passive house or don't work within someone's budget.
Yeah. Where would you like to see things go in the next 5 to 10 years in the building industry in New Zealand?
I would definitely like to see some changes, radical changes, Matthew, within the building, with the building code. From what I can see, nothing much is happening as far as improvements. We've sort of stayed pretty stagnant over the last 10 years. I think you'd agree with me.
Yep. I'd say 20 years, but...
Yeah, I'd say 20 years, yeah.
Or even probably longer, going back to 1978 or something when we introduced insulation requirement for the walls. I'm not sure that we've progressed a great deal since then.
Well, what I would like to see is similar to what Passive House does, where they have your climate zones. And so houses in Queenstown or Christchurch obviously need more insulation than Kaitaia or Auckland. So it would be more climate focused. And also I think there needs to be, I would like to see every house blower door tested.
Yes.
That's mandatory.
Yep.
Because that's one of the main reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it sets us apart from other builders, because we meet an independent standard.
And so, like I say, even though you're not going for certification every time, you're applying that philosophy and also doing the blower door test. So you're putting yourself, you're measuring yourself and measuring the quality of the detailing and also your team's work.
Yes, that's correct, Matthew. However, I would say that my goal is to be building every single house that we build certified, or at the very bare minimum, they have to go through the Passive House planning program.
Right.
I'm not prepared to sit there and make any assumptions on how their house is going to perform, because it will potentially, we could be building someone an oven.
Yeah.
And
yes,
that's the danger. So we're very, very careful about even advertising that we're building a passive house. If we embark on that, or calling a house, we never call a house a passive house unless it's going to be certified.
Yeah. So how do you account for the extra work involved and the extra cost of the detailing, the materials? Because I imagine there would be a lot of people that would want to go through those extra steps and have everything modelled, but it's got to cost more, right?
Yes, the cost is a big factor.
So how do you address that with the clients?
Firstly, we bring up pretty early in the conversation budget.
Mm-hmm.
And from our experience, now that we've built 12 of these homes, we're pretty confident on how much things cost and how much work is involved for me during the design stage, before we even start putting a peg in the ground, because that's extremely important. The more work that we put in there, the easier the build is.
Yeah.
Which is not always easily seen from clients, because I'm the builder. I should be only getting paid for working on site.
Yeah.
And so it's a difficult one. They pay a designer to work in an office and an engineer, not the builder.
Yeah.
So I think that mindset needs to change. So yeah, admittedly, I've done a lot of work without getting paid for it.
Right. But primarily it starts with having very open conversation at the beginning of the project and ensuring that the clients are bought into the process and know what they're getting into.
Absolutely it is. Yes, it is. I'm making it very, very clear from the outset what the expectations are, and that there will be a cost. I can't put a full contract price together until we know exactly where we're going. It's a difficult one, Matthew, because from concept design to a house that's got building consent and ready to go can be quite different.
Yeah.
So it's a commitment. You've got to you got to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And go. There's no point. A lot of like homeowners go, oh, how about we just get these plans priced minimum code, and then let's see what we can add in.
Yeah. It's completely the wrong way of doing it.
Completely the wrong way.
Yeah.
So it's a hard one, Matthew. A lot of the times, if the client, if their aspirations are to build a certified passive house and we work together, it seems to be quite a lot easier. But when you're up against a client that it all comes down to money, it can be a real battle, eh?
Do you reject some clients at the outset?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't. I've asked a couple of clients lately for references from them on previous builds rather than them.
Right. Interesting.
I'm very wary about, or gun shy about entering into a build, knowing not being 100% comfortable.
Yeah.
The design, the client, it's got to be a pretty good fit, eh?
Yeah.
And if it's a good fit, the outcome is achieved and everybody's happy.
Are you finding that clients are coming to you already knowing about Passive House and about that they're only coming to you because they're wanting a high performance house? They're not coming to you now because they want the cheapest possible house and
absolutely not. No, they're coming to us because they want a high performance passive house. We have enough of a name in the industry now to have delivered and solely focused on building these homes. I mean, you wouldn't go to a surgeon to a heart surgeon to get your knee reconstructed, would you?
Yeah. How long has it taken to get that reputation, do you think?
It's taken a few builds to get that reputation, a few successful builds. All of our builds have been successful. So it's taken 3 years.
Yeah.
3 to 4 years.
Yeah. You've got some beautiful, I think they're beautiful, regardless of what the architect thinks. I think the beauty speaks for themselves in terms of their simplicity, but also obviously when you visit them, I had the pleasure of visiting a couple of those during the construction phase, and you could tell that they were going to be really comfortable, healthy places to be in. Just walking inside, pre-lining, that you can tell the difference. You got some nice images on your website. Is that the best place for people to go to check out your work and to get in touch?
Yes, we've recently updated our website with what we've done, not what we can do,
right?
What we promised to do.
Right. Yeah.
So no, I'm really, really proud of what we have achieved over the past 4 years, and that's the best place to go and look. You can also we have a strong presence on Facebook.
Yep.
My wife runs the marketing side of things, and she's on Facebook a lot, Instagram,
and is most of you, are you restricted to sort of the Canterbury area?
Yes.
Yeah. Any plans to expand out from there, or you want to focus just on where you know and what you know?
I just want to focus on what we know.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough building these homes in our area, let alone having to travel away to another area. It's, I have 4 kids, Matthew, and I do have another life outside of building.
Hands full at home, let alone being out on site. You don't want to be traveling around the place all the time.
No, not until we get really confident what we do. It's still a long process. Any which way you look at it, to build a passive house.
Yeah. There's still everyone's kind of figuring out the best way of doing things, and new products coming onto the market and trying things out, and which is good. It's all good stuff.
It's all good stuff, and there are some really good steps being made in the right direction. I would like to see a few more window and door manufacturers out there.
Because that's a huge part of the cost, right?
It's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, right.
Recessing windows. There's a lot of unknowns. Any builder that wants to build, that embarks on building a house with, I'm talking proper recessed windows right in the middle of the frame. Are in for a bit of an eye opener. Yeah.
Very good. Hey, we'll a bit of wrap it up, because I think I can hear my kids running around upstairs. I think they're getting a bit ready, cabin feverish, wanting to get outside. So, hey, thanks a lot for your time, Peter. I really appreciate it, and keep up the good work. We'll keep an eye on future builds. Look forward to getting some more stunning photos.
Thanks, Matthew. Really appreciate it.
I don't know when we'll be allowed to travel again, but I have to catch up next time down in the South Island.
definitely would love to catch up with you, Matthew.
And that was Peter Bielski from Ethos Homes. He's a builder in Christchurch here in New Zealand. What did you take out of that interview, Zach?
Well, it's one that I think lots of single-family home builders in the passive house space will relate to, and it occurs to me that we haven't talked to a lot of folks who are in that sitting in that seat. But obviously there's some really unique things in terms of the huge gap between where New Zealand is in terms of its energy code and what he's doing with passive house, and the fact that he's doing passive house air tightness for any project, and predominantly passive house for his work, and obviously not without its challenges, but it was clear from what he had to say that passive house has been a really important differentiator, and he's now enjoying this kind of position of having folks in the marketplace come to him to do high performance and to do passive house, which is I know that well earned over, it sounds like 3 or 4 years, but that's a great place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting. He's saying that I asked him about if he's rejected clients, and he said that he not only does he give references for his previous work to prospective clients, but he also asks clients for references as well. So he's in a position now where he can get quite selective on deciding who to work with. And I've heard this from a few builders and designers as well, architects who are wanting to get into passive house. It's often just a matter of getting that first client or that first project so that they can hold that up and say, this is what we do.
Yeah. And instead of this is what we can do. I think he felt really, you could hear the kind of both sort of relief and pride in the fact that now that his website shows what they've done. Instead of just promises about what they know they can do.
Which is similar to the other topic about prefabrication, and because it's about breaking into a new market, and it's an interesting perception there and a challenge I think that Peter paints to getting that industry going. It's not just a matter of deciding one day we're going to switch from building with stick frames and doing things the way that we were taught or builders were taught as apprentices to suddenly having mass production the same way that he experienced it in Germany. It requires a concerted effort and an integrated change across the whole industry. He referred to a few instances. We have unfortunately had some instances here in New Zealand where some companies have jumped on prefabrication and thought this makes absolute sense, and we're going to jump in boots and all, and it's going to be great from day one. And we've had a few companies that have unfortunately failed because they have to invest to get some systems up and running, and the cash flow just hasn't quite worked out. So it is a challenge. We know that prefabrication is a great solution to providing affordable high-performance houses, but getting from where we are today to that new brave new world is a big challenge.
Absolutely, and the capital expenses of setting up a facility to is I can only imagine that's a really big lots of dollars involved in that. It was really interesting to hear his perspective, given that he has firsthand experience in with a really successful model in Germany that was developed, it sounds like, over decades. I mean, literally 7 decades. They've added to that what he refers to as a machine for that vertically integrated prefab delivery of homes, and now trying that and then maybe retreating from figuring maybe it's a little too early to do that in New Zealand at this point, and some skepticism there. And it comes at an interesting time because we at the Accelerator are actually hosting a summit tonight as we record this about prefab and passive house, and we'll have 3 leading manufacturers from the East eastern region of North America and 3 from the western region to talk about their experiences and the challenges, that they're experiencing and what's working and what isn't. So I encourage folks to, we'll have the video ready in this coming week that the podcast is available. So check the website and our YouTube channel for that. It should be an interesting kind of follow on to the conversation we just heard.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, I'd be really interested to hear from people. Reach out, let us know, particularly people who are in that middle ground between doing standard one-off houses, maybe building or designing 1, 2, single-digit numbers of houses per year, and the hundreds of houses. It's the gap going between those two, the gap in the middle. If you're working in that space, maybe doing some modular prefabrication or just some small scale stuff, it'd be great to hear about how we can progress the industry through that transition, and ideally not have it take 70 years here in the Pacific and across the States as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned that's probably a good transition to other events and activities we've got going on, Zach. What else apart from that great prefab event?
Yeah, thank you.
There's lots of other things going on.
Yes, so the Global Passive House Happy Hour next week will feature Marisa Ejea and Elena Reyes. Elena Reyes is at Passive House Institute in Darmstadt, and Marisa is based in Mexico, I believe. And anyway, they're going to be talking about a pilot project of Passive House projects in Mexico. So it should be this is the first time we've had project presentations at the happy hour that for projects in Latin America. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And we've got lots of other Passive House events going on in the world, including the UK Passive House, or the Passive House Trust conference that's going every Wednesday throughout November. So they're halfway through that right now.
Seeing some great posts come out of that on social media.
No kidding. And I mean, there's really interesting leadership happening in UK, and lots around schools and indoor air quality, really, really cool stuff. And then the Passive House Canada Summit is December 8th through 10th. So lots of cool programming there. And we're hopefully going to be integrating some of our programming with the summit as well at the accelerator. And we've got a list of other events and educational opportunities and trainings around the world that we can share in show notes.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you for that, Zach, and thank you all the listeners for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so on whatever app, wherever you listen, and subscribe to this. Let others know. It's great seeing the audience for this content grow. We're seeing some good numbers, so it's really pleasing to see that. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll be back again next week for another episode of Passive House Podcast.
See you next week. The Passive House Podcast and all of the programs of Passive House Accelerator are made possible by generous support from our sponsors. So I want to say thank you to them. Our founding sponsors are Baxtingui Architects, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, RDH Building Science, StoCorp, and Zola Windows. And our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority. Thank you.